Our next game takes us out to the northwest to Provo, Utah. Beautiful, beautiful town out there in Utah. If you ever get a chance to go out there, go out there. It's something special. But for today, we're going to keep it to football. The number 13 Kansas State Wildcats go on the road to take on the BYU Cougars in Lavelle Edwards Stadium. This is a 10:30 p.m. kickoff. Get your coffee ready. We're going to be up late on Saturday night watching this game. Brad and I will definitely be watching it, probably from our bedrooms. But, hey, we're going to be up watching it regardless. Kansas State favored by 6.5 in this one. Both teams come into this matchup 3-0. Both have had some decent wins, I would say, when you look at these two programs and what they offer and what they bring to the table. Brad, I'll turn it over to you. An interesting Big 12 matchup. Who comes out on top in Provo, Utah?
Yeah, Nate. So I want to start off BYU, a team that I thought was probably going to finish, towards the bottom of the Big 12. And, hey, look, we got a lot of football left. There's a lot of season left. Not to say they couldn't, but they've impressed me. They started out 3-0, of course, and we just mentioned a team that they upset a couple weeks ago, SMU. Hats off to BYU. They've got a good quarterback in Jake Retzlaff. I'm impressed with this guy. He's done a good job. 7 touchdowns, 3 picks. He's the leading rusher. That can be good. That can be bad. Take that for what you will. Got a really, really big physical, dynamic wide receiver in junior Chase Roberts that leads them. BYU is just a good, solid football team. They really are. But, Nate, when you think about the matchup they've got this week, Kansas State, Nate, personally my favorite right now in the Big 12. And look, the Big 12, just quick side note, it's wide open. But I think Kansas State so far has shown to me that they've got the best team. Nate, when you face a team and a defense like Kansas State, you can't afford to be one-dimensional. And to me, looking at BYU, Jake Retzlaff has done a good job so far, but they cannot afford to be one-dimensional. And kind of getting into my prediction, I think that's what you're going to see late on Saturday night. Kansas State, a dynamic defense. 2 guys stand out to me, Mott and Romaine, already with 2 sacks. They're big and they're physical, and they thrive on getting pressure on the quarterback and tackles for loss. And they, especially if they're able to slow down the run and get pressure on BYU quarterback Jake Retzlaff with only 4, they're going to force him into some mistakes. And I can't not talk about Kansas State without talking about, I think, Nate, to me, one of the quickest rising superstars in college football, Avery Johnson. He was highly recruited. And Nate, to me, he's played like it. I still think you're seeing him develop. He's a true sophomore, and it's exciting because you see the ceiling is so high for him. 6 touchdowns, 1 pick. And one thing I respect about Kansas State, they always just seem to have just great running backs, and DJ Giddens is that next one. Nate, I say Kansas State's my favorite for the Big 12, and I'm sticking with that. Wildcats big on Saturday night over BYU.
Wow, Brad. Not good for the BYU fans from your perspective. I want to talk about this game from a different angle, if I may. We talk about these two programs coming into this game 3-0. We talk about the stats. We talk about this and that, and that's great. On paper, Kansas State's the better team by far. We can look at BYU and say, well, they have the home field advantage. The elevation might come into play. I know it's got to be higher than where Kansas State plays. Nonetheless, they're going to be ready to show up. My biggest thing for this game, Brad, is, and I'm not trying to look ahead, but we have to look ahead. Kansas State plays at home next week against a very good ranked Oklahoma State Cowboys team. And so when we look at this game, they've got to go on the road up to Utah. Going to be a tough environment to play in. We talk about the fan base for BYU. Very, very excited to have this matchup at home. And you have to wonder, is Kansas State looking ahead? Are they going to slip up in this game? Because, Brad, every single year we see a program that has a lot of promise at the end of the road, the light at the end of the tunnel, but sometimes it gets shut out because of games like this. Can Kansas State stay poised? Can they go into Provo and stay healthy and get ready for next week? Because to me, that's the deciding factor in this game. Who will Kansas State show up to be? Will they show up overlooking this BYU team thinking that they're far superior on paper, or will they come in and play this game, dominate, build confidence, and keep going next week against the Oklahoma State Cowboys? One thing I'm really impressed by with Kansas State, though, is their progression. We talk about, and I mentioned this earlier in another game, Brad, is the ability for a team over time to get better and better. We saw Kansas State barely squeak by a Tulane team who a lot of people thought Kansas State was better than by far. Tulane played their tails off. Kansas State comes out with the win. Then we look at Kansas State come out last week and just obliterate the Arizona Wildcats, and what we thought was going to be a decent matchup wasn't even close. Give me the Kansas State Wildcats big in this one. I agree with you, Brad. I just think Kansas State, again, on paper, far superior than BYU. I could be completely wrong. I do think BYU is going to play very aggressive. They have nothing to lose in this game. It's a ranked opponent. If BYU does win this game, you best believe those fans are storming the field. And be sure to check out this game. I know it's a late game, but it's probably, it's not probably, it is the most beautiful stadium you will ever see in college football, period. You can't argue with that. But in the end, give me the Kansas State. And I'm getting way too close to the mic there. Give me the Kansas State Wildcats big in this one, and look forward to calling the game next week versus Oklahoma State. Let us know down in the comments who you think will come out in this Big 12 matchup in Provo, Utah.